Well, good morning, Fisher friends. It is Friday morning, bright and early. I thought I would come to you from the library today again and read to you the next chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We are on page 215, if you can believe it. We are maybe, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through the book. You can kind of see we've got this much left. Today starts chapter 13, and this chapter is called Nicholas Flamel. Now, if you remember, Nicholas Flamel was the name of the person they were trying to find more information about. And the only way they thought they could find information was to go to the restricted section of the library. And remember that Harry put on the robe that makes him disappear and went into the restricted section to try to find more information about Nicholas Flamel. So maybe this chapter, maybe we'll find a little bit. We're gonna break up the chapter into two parts. We'll read the first part today. So sit back and relax and enjoy. Here we go. Chapter 13, Nicholas Flamel. Dumbledore had convinced Harry not to go looking for the Mirror of the Arised again. And for the rest of the Christmas holidays, the invisibility cloak stayed folded at the bottom of his trunk. Harry wished he could have forgotten what he'd seen in the mirror as easily, but he couldn't. He started having nightmares. Over and over again, he dreamed about his parents disappearing in a flash of green light while a high voice cackled with laughter. "You see, Dumbledore was right. That mirror could drive you mad," said Ron when Harry told him about these dreams. Hermione, who came back the day before term started, took a different view of things. She was torn between horror at the idea of Harry being out of bed, roaming the school 3 nights in a row. "If Filch had caught you," she said many times, and disappointment that he hadn't at least found out who Nicholas Flamel was. They had almost given up hope of ever finding Flamel in a library book, and even though Harry was still sure he'd read the name somewhere, once term had started, they were back to skimming through books for 10 minutes during their breaks. Harry had even less time than the others do because Quidditch practice had started again. Wood was working the team harder than ever. Even the endless rain that had replaced the snow couldn't dampen his spirits. The Weasleys complained that Wood was becoming a fanatic, but Harry was on Wood's side. If they won their next match against Hufflepuff, they would overtake Slytherin in the house championship for the first time in 7 years. Quite apart from wanting to win, Harry found that he had fewer nightmares when he was tired out after training. Then, during one particularly wet and muddy practice session, Wood gave the team a bit of bad news. He had just gotten very angry with the Weasleys, who kept dive-bombing each other and pretending to fall off their brooms. "Will you stop messing around?" he yelled. "That's exactly the sort of thing that'll have us lose the match. Snape's refereeing this time, and he'll be looking for any excuse to knock points off Gryffindor." George Weasley really did fall off his broom at those words. "Snape's refereeing?" he sputtered through a mouthful of mud. "When's he ever refereed a Quidditch match? He's not going to be fair if we might overtake Slytherin." The rest of the team landed next to George to complain too. "It's not my fault," said Wood. "We've just got to make sure we play a clean game so Snape hasn't got an excuse to pick on us." Which was all very well, thought Harry, but he had another reason for not wanting Snape near him while he was playing Quidditch. The rest of the team hung back to talk to one another as usual at the end of practice, but Harry headed straight back to the Gryffindor common room, where he found Ron and Hermione playing chess. Chess was the only thing Hermione ever lost at, something Harry and Ron thought was really good for her. "Don't talk to me for a moment," said Ron when Harry sat down next to him. "I need to He caught sight of Harry's face. "What's the matter with you? You look terrible." Speaking quietly so that no one else could hear, Harry told the other two about Snape's sudden, sinister desire to be a Quidditch referee. "Don't play," said Hermione at once. "Say you're ill," said Ron. "Pretend to break your leg," Hermione suggested. "Really break your leg," said Ron. "I can't," said Harry. "There isn't a reserve seeker. If I back out, Gryffindor can't play at all." At that moment, Neville toppled into the common room. How he had managed to climb through the portrait hole was anyone's guess, because his legs had been stuck together with what they recognized at once was the leg locker curse. He must have had a bunny hop all the way to Gryffindor Tower. Everyone fell over laughing except Hermione, who leaped up and performed a counter curse. Neville's legs sprang apart, and he got to his feet trembling. "What happened?" Hermione asked him, leading over to sit with Harry and Ron. "Malfoy," said Neville shakily. "I met him outside the library. He said he'd been looking for someone to practice that on." "Go to Professor McGonagall," Hermione urged Neville. "Report him." Neville shook his head. "I don't want more trouble," he mumbled. "You've got to stand up to him, Neville," said Ron. "He's used to walking all over people, but that's no reason to lie down in front of him and make it easier." "There's no need to tell me I'm not brave enough to be in Gryffindor. Malfoy's already done it," Neville choked out, almost in tears. Harry felt in the pocket of his robes and pulled out a chocolate frog, the very last one from the box Hermione had given him for Christmas. He gave it to Neville, who looked as though he might cry. "You're worth 12 of Malfoy," Harry said. "The Sorting Hat chose you for Gryffindor, didn't it? And where's Malfoy? In stinkin' Slytherin." Neville's lips twitched in a weak smile as he unwrapped the frog. "Thanks, Harry. I think I'll go to bed. Do you want the card? You collect them, don't you?" As Neville walked away, Harry looked at the famous wizard card. "Dumbledore again," he said. "He was the first one I ever..." He gasped. He looked at the back of the card, then he looked up at Ron and Hermione. "I found him," he whispered. "I found Flamel. I told you I'd read that name somewhere. I read it on the train coming here. Listen to this. Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945 for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel." Hermione jumped to her feet. She hadn't looked so excited since they'd gotten back the marks on their very first piece of homework. "Stay there," she said, and she sprinted up the stairs to the girls' dormitories. Harry and Ron barely had time to exchange mystified looks before she was dashing back, an enormous old book in her arms. "I've never thought to look in here before," she whispered excitedly. "I got this out of the library weeks ago for a bit of light reading." "Light?" said Ron, but Hermione had told him to be quiet until she'd looked something up and started flicking frantically through the pages, muttering to herself. At last, she found what she was looking for. "I knew it! I knew it!" "Are we allowed to speak yet?" said Ron grumpily. Hermione ignored him. "Nicholas Flamel," she whispered dramatically, "is the only known maker of the Sorcerer's Stone." This didn't quite have the effect she'd expected. "The what?" said Harry and Ron. "Oh, honestly, don't you two read? Look, read that there." She pushed the book toward them, and Harry and Ron read, "The ancient study of alchemy is concerned with making the Sorcerer's Stone, a legendary substance with astonishing powers. The stone will transform any metal into pure gold. It also produces the elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal." By the way, immortal means you can't die, in case you don't know what that word means. There have been many reports of the Sorcerer's Stone over the centuries, but the only stone currently in existence belongs to Mr. Nicholas Flamel, the noted alchemist and opera lover. Mr. Flamel, who celebrated his 665th birthday last year, enjoys a quiet life in Devon with his wife, Perenelle, 658. "See," said Hermione when Ron and Harry had finished, "the dog must be guarding Flamel's Sorcerer's Stone. I bet he asked Dumbledore to keep it safe for him because they're friends and he knew someone was after it, and that's why he wanted the stone removed out of Gringotts." "A stone that makes gold and stops from ever dying?" said Harry. "No wonder Snape's after it. Anyone would want it." "And no wonder we couldn't find Flamel in the study of recent developments in wizardry," said Juan. "He's not exactly recent if he's 665, is he?" And that's where we are going to stop. I know it's only been about 10 minutes, but I want to make sure we keep the second half for next time. So until next week, have a really, really great weekend, and know that I love you all very much, and I can't wait to see you next week. Make sure you read and record those reading minutes. Get outside even though it's raining, and be kind to each other. And until next week, I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.